Peace, peace, and welcome. We're glad you're here. This is the Cook on Monday Morning podcast. I am here with the homie, Randy Seriguchi. Thank you for being here, man.
Peace, blessings. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Appreciate the opportunity here. This is going to be a good conversation.
Yeah, I'm excited that you're here.
Yeah.
At Cook on Monday Morning, what we believe is that if we can own Monday morning, we can own the week. If we can own the week, we can change our year. And if we can change our year, we can change our lives. I'm super excited to have Randy on because he is doing a lot of exciting things as the executive director of Urban Ed Academy. We met several years ago. He has a really incredible backstory. I want to get into who he is, the work that he's doing, and what he's building in San Francisco. Thank you again, my brother.
Yes, sir. Oh, now I'm getting kind of nervous now, man.
We
went from Monday morning to changing the world.
Well, you're doing it.
I'm with it though. Yeah. Let's get it.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about what Urban Ed Academy is.
Urban Ed Academy is a homegrown organization in Bayview Hunters Point, southeast side of San Francisco. It was founded in 2010 as a Saturday school for boys of color, giving them STEM experiences in elementary school by matching men of color that look like them. You know, our motto is you can't be what you can't see, and representation matters. Mm-hmm. So if it matters on Saturdays, if it matters on Mondays, it should matter every day of the week. And now we have a mission to put as many brothers, Black and brown men, into elementary schools so that kids can see themselves earlier and have a better understanding of who this person's going to be that they're going to interact with for the rest of their life. Mm-hmm. So in a very wild place like San Francisco, in terms of the housing market and this gentrification crisis happening, having teachers live in places where they work is increasingly difficult. Mm-hmm. So we've come up with an initiative called Man the Bay, where we're trying to courageously change the face of what talent looks like in schools, and are moving 100 men of color into San Francisco to teach for a service-based opportunity here with our children.
That's beautiful. Yeah, when I first heard about Urban Ed Academy, it was when it was still a Saturday school. Mm-hmm. And, you know, if you can picture you going in on a Saturday morning and it's 100 kids, all boys, 3rd through 5th grade, like running around in one of our community facilities at the YMCA. Mm-hmm. And as soon as I walked in, I was immediately blown away because, you know, there are so many narratives about how our families engage in school. Yeah. One of the main ones is they don't want to learn. Yeah. Right. All right. So we have a bunch of families in on a Saturday morning that are getting their kids more instruction. Right. So that was the first thing that was like powerful about it. The second thing was that when I saw the students doing STEM workshops, they were like completely locked in. Yeah. They were learning how to repair cell phones. They were doing different math problems. They were doing coding, and the level of engagement in each of the rooms was really incredible. Yeah. And I think that was a little bit before your time, before you came on to run Urban Ed. What were you doing before you were running Urban Ed?
I was in Sacramento. I was working there for 3.5 years. At the time, I was working for Mayor Kevin Johnson, right before the 2016 election, when he decided not to run. But with him doing kind of a ton of stuff, but got to do some traveling and working with a nonprofit affiliated with him as well called Stand Up for Great Schools. We were doing some work trying to galvanize African-American communities to care about their schools, or try to take some ownership over a portion of the school by sparking some conversations and then trying to connect with professionals across the country that had the opportunity to take an idea, whatever they had, to the next level. And so for some folks, that was coming up with new innovative school models. For some folks, it was deeper parental engagement, whatever it was. At the time, he was the president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors. And so along the travel schedule that he had, we had opportunities to do some more deep community engagement around education. That was one project. And then I'm just lucky that we had the president that we had in office at the time, and the My Brother's Keeper challenge was active. And I mean, just a ton of energy was going around it. You got to learn a lot about what other mayors were doing. So our base was SAC, but we had a chance to get some insight into what some other cool ideas were looking like around the country. And then had to get some policy work done too, in a very interesting town, man. Sacramento.
City Halls. But did you grow up in Sacramento?
I didn't. I'm originally from New Jersey.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where in New Jersey?
Little beach town called Asbury Park.
Asbury Park.
Yeah, on the Jersey Shore.
Oh, okay.
I mean, MTV co-opted that, that term, Jersey Shore. So I try to edge around it. Yeah.
Well, what was your Asbury Park, Jersey Shore childhood like? What did that look like?
Asbury Park. I mean, so I didn't know this at the time, but Asbury Park is in Monmouth County, which is one of 3 Republican counties in New Jersey.
Okay.
So it's Asbury Park, Neptune, Long Branch, maybe Keyport, 4 cities or so out of all of them in the county that are majority Black. So it was one of the few cities in the state that had a majority Black population, and we're a small city, it was like 15,000 people. But I thought that's what the world was. You know, I thought there was Black people everywhere until you venture out to the mall, and it's not.
Well, we're everywhere. We're just not everywhere. You know,
right.
So talk a little bit about your upbringing, what your home environment was like. You obviously have built a career in education. I know it didn't always start there. I think you have a law degree.
I have a law degree.
Yeah. So what was your upbringing like? What was life like in Asbury Park?
Asbury Park was it was interesting. I felt like I was sheltered somewhat to what I felt like I was sheltered. I'll stop there.
Okay.
Full stop. And I felt like I was in a small town, and it was just, that was our world, was the beach, was playing ball, going to school, and it just felt like a normal town, normal lifestyle. And I feel like a lot of people say that about Jersey. It's just what it is. But I grew up with my mom in a blended family. I'm also learning those terms. She and my father split early, and I don't really have a relationship with him. That happened very early, and we can get back to that. But I didn't grow up with him at all. But she remarried, and I have a brother, 2 sisters. I'm the oldest, so I got a little crack at leadership early in life. And didn't know it at the time either, but like our schools were just not great in Asbury Park. And my mom knew that. She had foresight, and I didn't. I went to a high school called High Technology High School, #1 high school in the state. You got a test to get in, similar to Lowell here in the city. And that was a mind-blowing experience. I had a whole lot of interesting stories and things happen there, but it's interesting. It took me getting out of my hometown to finally get my first understanding of race and racial dynamics.
Okay.
In my freshman year, it was a girl, non-Black. I was gonna say white. And I was like, let me not say white. It's not a curse word. This is a white girl that I was talking on the phone. Right. And I remember freshman year, man, our first like back to school night, overheard her yelling at or getting yelled at by her mom. He can't call here ever again. And I won't say some of the other things I heard, but I'm like devastated. I'm like, I'm a pretty good kid. Like, I'm a scrawny, little curly haired kid. Like, I'm not gonna hurt anybody. And there was all of this animus for what? For nothing. And so the first like shock understanding of race as a social construct, as this fake thing that can be real, depending on your experience and your vantage point, smacked me in the face in a very high functioning institution of education. Right.
Yeah. And so did that change how you interacted socially? Did you continue to embrace people that were white? Did you only embrace Black people like throughout high school? How did that play out as you went through high school?
My best friend, one of my best friends in high school was white. His name is, I won't say his name, but I definitely had no problem with that. I went to a private school right before that. My mom didn't want me to go to the middle school because she just wasn't a fan. We lived literally 5-minute walk from the middle school. And so she sent me to a Catholic school. And that's probably where it was. I've noticed there were more white kids around us, but they were cool. And I never had a problem. But it did sort of harden my stance on being very proud of being Black. And that was a conflicting conversation that sometimes actually came up within and outside of the family for me, because I'm mixed background. My last name's Seriguchi. My dad is 100% Japanese. And there's that. So I guess like with the unwritten rules of what you are, you're what your father was. Outside, I guess, Jewish lineage aside. So I'm Japanese. But, you look at me and talk to me, and you're going to know there's something else there. Yeah. My mom's Black and Puerto Rican. Okay. But Black was the prevailing identity. It still is, honestly. So I hardened in that, but I was still understanding that this is a big world. You got to work with everybody. Yeah, that's interesting, because the father-mother dynamic, I have heard that. And I've also heard Black people just say, if you got Black in you, you Black. And that comes from that comes from that history of the one drop rule, and never being, if you had any Black blood in you, according to the messages at the time of Jim Crow and all of that, then you were considered Black. But I think, we talked about being proud of being Black. We also proudly embrace all people of the diaspora, even if they're not 100% from the diaspora, because we all kind of, being like having a history of slavery, there's all some mixed race storylines within our lineage in America. So you're in high school. Where'd you go to college? University of Michigan.
Okay.
Go Blue.
Go Blue. Okay. So you went from New Jersey to Michigan.
New Jersey to Michigan.
And what was that like?
Man, I learned for the first time that everybody hates Jersey.
Oh, okay. Does everybody hate Jersey?
I mean, there's always a wisecrack something like, "Oh, you from Jersey?" Like it's always like you're.
Do they call it the armpit? Is that what they?
Armpit of America?
Oh yeah, I have heard
garbage. But like the intonation goes up like Jersey, like it's like a.
How could you be from Jersey? You so cool.
Yeah, that wasn't always the case, man. Right. I was. I guess I had some Jersey. I'm from Jersey. I'm never going to.
I know a lot of good people from Jersey.
They're good people, man. Yeah. But I get excited. I get maybe a little aggressive with my language sometimes. I got a rude awakening in college early on that. Okay. Because most of the Black folks at the school were from Detroit. Okay. And Detroit is like, it's player, laid back, smooth. Yeah. So they weren't hearing that. Okay. How was your experience in Michigan? Did you enjoy it? Man, it's the greatest university on the planet. I'll say that. Okay. Free. That's free. That is free. Okay. That's the first time I've heard that. Oh, man. I'm a full Wolverine through and through. I'll fight like hell for Michigan every day of the week. But it was cold up there. So that aside, it's incredible, man. Brilliant people everywhere you go. Just so many resources that the university had at its disposal. I pledged as a freshman. Oh, okay. Pledged Alpha Phi Alpha, Fraternity Incorporated, Epsilon chapter, Fifth House. So we have a very proud history there. Fifth chapter ever founded of one of the other greatest organizations on the planet. Okay. And that shaped a lot of my experience. So I dove into leadership and just getting extracurricular with my collegiate experience, like right away. I did improv with a group called Images of Identities. I had a radio show with WCB and FM.
You had a radio voice.
Try to keep it cool, mellow. I was on Wolf TV for a hot second. I was on I got elected to student assembly. I mean, I'm not gonna go down. And then you were very involved. I was involved, and I did a few other things too. Okay, and I had a great time. I had a great time. Yeah, I was a very different college student. You were at Williams? Yeah, I went to Williams. Oh, yeah. And I if I made it to class, it was a good week. Damn, for real?
I kind of I mean, later in college, I started to get more involved. Okay. And it was a smaller school. It wasn't, it didn't have, it had everything there. It had like different sports clubs. Yeah. And people kind of found their tribe early and they rode with that tribe throughout. So I didn't really find that tribe early. I kind of found the misfits that, at Williams, the people that weren't just a part of a lot of people at Williams, a lot of them play sports. Okay. Or they were the quote unquote misfits. Right. Okay. Well, no, not those weren't the misfits. They had a tribe. They were like a part of a group. We didn't have fraternities. They got rid of them in like the 1970s, around the time the school became co-ed, because it was preventing people from meeting people outside of that little group. But, they had like the arts people, the sports people, and, a bunch of other groups. And I found my people, but it took time. Yeah. So when people say like, I meet a lot of brothers that were a part of the fraternity world, and they do all the little gang signs and they pat their chest. Come on. And they do all that stuff and it just goes right over my head. I was like, oh, okay. Like, I guess that's cool, bro. They like go through the party with the canes and like start shouting. Oh, and everything. Yeah. See, I can't endorse. I can't protect you on that. But people have told me that if I were to pledge that I would probably be an alpha. I can see that. And that, but I don't know what that means. It's kind of like when women ask me what my sign is, and and they're like, "Oh, you should be." He's like, "Oh, you an Aries? Oh, okay, I see why you." They know. It helps people understand you faster. Yeah, I guess. Yeah. But I definitely respect and appreciate, longstanding organizations where people have a positive sense of community and they're pushing one another to be better versions of themselves. And you Cook on Monday morning is kind of about that. It's kind of about elevating people that can that represent a better version of ourselves, Yeah. And so you were a very active student. Congrats on that. I'm sure you had a great time too. But I think you have to celebrate all young college students that are highly involved. I think that's important. Why'd you go to law school? Where'd you go to law school? I went to American University. Okay. Washington College of Law, DC. And I always knew I wanted to try to go to law school, but I got convinced to go earlier than I think I wanted to go. Well, I was ready to go. I was going to work for Progressive Insurance right out in Cleveland, Ohio, right outside of Cleveland, maybe Mayfield Heights. And my best friend's dad, I remember having a conversation with him, like around the holiday time, senior year. And he was like, did you ever wake up and say, I want to be a lawyer? And I said, yeah, I'm really excited about that. Okay, good. Did you ever wake up and say, I want to be an insurance analyst? And I said, I got a good little package from you. I'm coming out like debt free. A lot of my friends weren't doing that. So I had a chance to kind of take a year, honestly, no matter what. And given that I was so flimsy with what I wanted that year to be, I mean, you kind of pressured me into being an adult about it. And so he's like, if you're going to go now. Don't take a break. And so I pushed forward, but I didn't take the application process seriously. I took the LSAT late. I didn't take any prep for it. What else? I wasn't really working collaboratively with other people I knew were studying for it, and like to get ready and just get sharper, because it's just about reps, right? Like that test had no bearing on how good of a law student I was going to be, which had no bearing on how good of a lawyer I was going to be. And yet it's this measuring stick for whether or not you're worth admission into my school.
whole nother series. There's another cook on Monday mornings. We talk about standardized test conundrum. But I kind of stumbled into getting all my stuff together, and I got in and went. Okay. But I knew I wanted to be closer to home, back to, at least on the East Coast. And then I wanted to be in DC. I didn't know that Obama was going to win at the time.
What year did you go to law school?
2008.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So you was okay. He was in the middle of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I heard some rumblings like after graduating, and then I think he had that killer speech. Well, no, it wasn't that year. He was already like on his way to becoming the nominee, maybe. Okay. I can't now I'm like confusing the years, but I was like, there's a small part of me, and then I'm glad I made that bet with myself. It's like, you got to be around for that level of history. Right. And I'm glad I was. When Frat Brothers and other folk came in for the inauguration, so cold that morning, ice cold that morning. I was like, I live here, and I get to be a part of this for at least the next 4. Yeah. And so, yeah,
that was a special moment because I remember too. I wrote Nancy Pelosi's office. I graduated college in 2008, and I came back to San Francisco, and coming out of school, I don't think I'll ever feel any way. And I'm in politics, right? Right. I'll never feel that, I think, enthralled and tied to anybody's political journey as I did when he came on the scene in 2007 and throughout his race. Like, I was like glued to the television. And now that I'm in politics and I see these people up close, I'm like, you're not really anybody for me to be that impressed by. Yeah. And even having the experience of governing and seeing how he was trying to maneuver throughout his presidency, I don't think many of us felt the same way about his second win that we did about the first. It would just like captured the country in a way that I doubt that I'll ever experience again because I've seen too much, Yeah. But I didn't. So I reached out to Nancy Pelosi's office. They sent me tickets to the inauguration. Okay. And I didn't go. And for how glued I was to the TV, like I didn't go. Like, because it was like,
we gotta take a pause there. Yeah. You gotta unpack that at least for 60 seconds. What were you thinking?
I think it must have been like on a Monday or a Tuesday. It was early in the week or something like that. Okay. And I got the tickets like a day before, and I just got a new job, so I would have had to tell my job I was leaving. I would have to buy a plane ticket. I'm fresh out of school. I don't have that much money. I could have made a way.
Okay, but
I didn't. Right.
But also, no, the way would have been like gargantuan for you to get through.
It felt like a lot of pressure to do it. Yeah. But looking back on, it's been 12 years. Looking back on it, it was, it was something I wish I would have been a part of, especially now knowing that I'll never feel it. I don't think I'll ever feel another way about that type of political figure again. But it's good that you got to be there. What was that morning like for you?
It was incredible. Like I said, it was cold, man, but like it was just all of the energy was just pure. And what's funny about the whole inauguration, like jokes that was happening with Trump's, was they had to fabricate those stories because they didn't have that authenticity. Right. Like literally, man, it was like everybody was on the same page. And I mean, it's you fast forward to now, and you can't believe a time like that existed. But for even all of the people that hated him, quote unquote, never wanted him to be there. I mean, let's just call it what it is. We're racist and didn't want to see a black man in that seat. I don't know. That was drowned out by the love. It was palpable, right? And it didn't have to be said, right? Literally, because you were cold and you weren't trying to talk to people. but also, like, it was just. It's tough for me to describe. Honestly. It was surreal.
Yeah. So you're in law school, and
yeah.
So talk about that.
I'm in law school and lost as hell. I was a bad student actually, and I think I blame that on having an easy time in my K through 12 experience. Okay, like things just came a little easier. I didn't have to put as much into it, and I took for granted what it meant to actually really study and grind. Right. And so my first semester was tough, man. The time it wasn't the learning curve, but the time investment curve was not something I prepared for. And I played catch up a little bit, but still had the active bug. So I wrote onto a journal, which it's like a formulaic set of things you got to do to be attractive to a big law firm.
Got it.
One of them is be on journal. The other be on moot court. You know, you want to be on the honor society. The others get a couple of killer internships if you can, if not just one, to stamp and verify that people like you and you're palatable. And then you go and get a big law firm job. I did those two things. I didn't do moot court. I did mock trial. So the trial version is a little more theatrical. Okay. But also, in my mind, harder because you have to be able to think on your feet. And are you familiar with the federal rules of evidence?
No. I'm glad you asked that question.
It's a very, I'd ask. I was going to just go into it. Yeah. But it's the basis on which you run a trial. Okay. And you are able to introduce evidence so that the jury can go take it in the back and consider everything. Got it. Now, here's what's interesting about it. In real life, when something happens, it happened, right? You saw it. Yeah. I could talk to that. In court, when something happens that wasn't supposed to happen, somebody objects and it gets stricken from the record. Okay. But we know people. I saw that and I heard it. Right. So it's some tricky ass. I'm not allowed to. This is a family. You don't have program. To curse, yeah, but you can if you want. There's some tricksters out there, namely defense attorneys, because depending on the court type, criminal being the easiest because of the burden, you got to make it prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. You can do things so that you can manipulate the jury, and if it's 12 people, they're people. Right. So the X factors are infinite that you can introduce to their minds before they get in the room, and that's fun because it's like mano a mano. Right. Moot court, it's your speaking abilities are cool, but it's mostly about writing. Yeah, and that is why I think lawyers appreciate or honor that a little bit more. So anyway, did those two formulaic things. Was on our student bar association, which is a student council. Okay. Again, and got to manage some budgetary stuff, and I started a production company. Okay, yeah, you laugh with a couple of buddies. Well, I laugh because I was like, "Well, okay, wow." I'm like, I haven't thought about my law school experience in a while, but with two of my boys, Jesse and Joe, and then Ben B. Wine, we started a little mini production company called Channel 38. Okay, we had political interviews, we did comedy sketches. And then we made music. Nice. And it all started from a radio show we did in the basement of former Congressman John B. Anderson. Okay. Who ran for president in 1980 or something. And was randomly still living around. And my boy Jesse was randomly living in his basement. And we would finish our work and then go and get in the lab and get creative. And then I went and clerked for a judge.
Yeah, you sound like a high capacity brother.
Man, you're generous. Some people would say I'm lost. Okay, and, that's how you did start. That is how you started. You may not have had a sense of direction, and obviously, what you do now, you're not a practicing attorney. I'm correct? Not right, and right. But it sounds like you found ways to get plugged in, and you took initiative. Tried. I think I got compared to a dog, and it was a white guy that said this, so it was
you got compared to a dog.
A dog that sees cars riding by, and is just distracted by every car because I don't know, you're just distracted. Yeah, I feel like that professionally. I see. Socially I'm cool, but were you ever an educator?
No, I was never a classroom teacher. I've worked a lot in schools, but I never taught a class.
Okay. Well, law school was actually too where I became fascinated and I think fully invested in education. I taught my second year of law school, taught constitutional law with a law student team. And it changed my life.
How so?
Well, we were supposed to be teaching constitutional law to freshmen, sophomores, and juniors, but nobody could read over a freshman grade level, right by the border of where Northwest and Northeast meet, little north of the Capitol. And these kids
you were teaching constitutional law at a high school.
At a high school.
Okay. I thought you said at college. My fault. You went to a high school.
We were at high school.
Okay, and then you saw the level of illiteracy, and it opened your eyes.
I mean, my purpose in being there was literally moot.
Right.
No pun intended, because we were trying to get them ready for a moot court competition. But like, I'm like, how can we do this? Unless we get creative and think on our feet and do what educators do every day.
Right.
And they just persevere through. And so the level of I think, fractured resources and structures around them, either at the school or at home, was something beyond me. I didn't really understand it at the time, but I remember being just deeply angered by the fact that these kids, these were good kids, and smart kids too, couldn't read what we were putting in front of them.
Right.
And so
it's heartbreaking.
I at least had the foresight to know I can't go teach the country. Even if I'm super passionate now and become the best teacher ever, forget my legal stuff and just go teach for America just to get a credential and get into it. I can't scale myself.
Yeah. So
how do we get bigger impact?
Yeah.
And that opened me up into the policy thing that moved me to Sacramento.
I see. So that experience was a catalyst that drove you into education policy work. And you found it out. Is that, let me know if I'm getting this storyline right.
That's right.
And then you found an opportunity in Sacramento.
Yes.
And that's how you got started doing education policy with Kevin Johnson.
Well, before that, I was working at a group called Students First.
Okay.
For a woman named Michelle Ree, who
you and Michelle Ree, what's it called? Protege?
Protege? No, I wouldn't say protege. I didn't have that level of access to Michelle. She had a lot.
She's a charged figure in public education.
She gets polarizing responses from people for sure.
She was out in DC.
She was.
So that makes sense then, like Michelle, because I don't know if they're still married, but Kevin Johnson is Michelle Ree. Yeah. Okay. So you got connected to her. You were at law school there.
Yeah.
Or her organization.
Through the organization. So another alum of the teaching program we did is called the Marshall Brennan Constitutional Literacy Project. He was the VP of policy there. Okay. And then reached out to the director, and she knew I was looking for something else. And so she put it in front of me. I mean, it's interesting how life works, because like that was a passion I could maybe have jumped and done that. But my whole network professionally was in DC. Right. So I uprooted out of DC because I broke up with my girl. And I hate to say it like it was an emotional move, but it was an emotional move. Like, we don't want to be here.
Yeah. Breakups will move you across the country. Yeah.
So ran away, ran to California.
Okay. Well, it was Sacramento's gain in a lot of ways, right? You joined this new office, and what was that transition like?
Oh man, that was interesting. Sac is just a different town. DC is definitely not what it is today, but it was already kind of changing. Like Columbia Heights was turning over; it was getting a lot whiter. A couple other neighborhoods where the wave was there, but it was still a recession, especially for lawyers. Right. And so, anyway, I took for granted being in DC, because then moving to Sacramento, it was a town like you had to make Sacramento yours. Okay. And so if you just let stuff come to you, that wasn't going to happen. Like, it's not like, live music is available every night, or, it's just a jumping spot. It's low key very big. It's like 600,000 people. The county, I think the metro is like 1.2 million. Right. So that's bigger than DC, but it still felt really small. And so I focused a lot on my work and just diving in on becoming smarter about it and figuring out where my place would be. Right. So I was on the policy teams, a legislative analyst. I was assigned to California. And as you know, Michelle gets polarizing responses from people. The teachers union was not very happy with her at all. Yeah, they
might not like me now that you're on the...
Oh, man.
I'm just joking.
I'm sorry, man. There is a bright line here between...
we should. I mean, I definitely want to get into our shared vision of what we want to see happen for Black youth in the city, which I think should have no political ties. I love that. If children's lives improve.
It has to be apolitical. Yeah. Because we're talking about human development.
Exactly.
And, you're not born a Democrat or a Republican. So why does that impact you?
Yeah.
Anyway, they were not a fan of the policies being pushed. And I'll say in my time learning, I got to see how political and how much money was sort of weighing down progress, true progress. If you look at what was happening in DC when she was there, it wasn't popular then, but as people started to come around to it, because they're like, oh, we're getting some results. Now, granted, was every change a hit? No. So was the full policy agenda that we had like absolutely the gold standard anywhere? No. I think ultimately all politics are political and all education is political.
Yeah, absolutely.
So were you following the local control funding? Well, you obviously know that now in your seat.
Yep.
I was there when it passed. And everybody was a fan of that. No matter what spectrum you were on, kids were going to get more money and we were going to be able to make better decisions locally to impact them.
Yeah. Explain a little about the local control formula.
So the local control funding formula, in essence, started out really to simplify how we funded our schools. Before 2012, there was something called the categorical system, where there were 60 different categories of funding that the state would send out to districts to get funded. And if in some of these categories, if you didn't spend that money, you didn't get to spend it. It was like you use it or lose it.
Right.
But are you going to use your technology fund every year if technology is not like rapidly changing like that for you to want to buy it, need to buy it? Probably not. You're going to use your library fund every year. You should, in theory. I hate to sound like a jerk. You should
use both those things.
In practice, that wasn't happening.
Right.
And so there were bigger streams of money than, I'll just use those as examples, larger streams of money that were underutilized. And as a result, you saw mismanagement, you saw a lack of performance outcomes moving in the right direction in certain places across the state. And you're like, well, how do we make this easier for districts to be more nimble? Let's simplify it down. And from 60, they went to 3 bands. Okay. So you get your base income or your base allocation for every kid, your supplemental allocation for priority groups. Those are your English language learners, your low income status students, and your foster students. And then you get a concentration band for any district that has of those supplemental groups, 50 plus 1% of them. And then for every percentage more, you get more.
Right. Yep.
Truly tries to follow the kid.
Yeah. Thanks for breaking that down. Yeah.
Did I do a good job?
Yeah. Yeah. I think there are more specialized groups within the ones that you mentioned, but it did really change how districts thought about their budgets. And I think it was widely celebrated because, when we talk about what equity means in education, it should more so look like this, right? It should more so look like we know that certain students need more. Yeah. So we're going to finance our districts around that, that idea, that belief. It's like it was putting it into action. So with Urban Ed Academy, is it no longer a Saturday school? Is it only? Well, go ahead.
So we don't run the citywide Saturday school for boys as we did. Okay. We've now sort of tag teamed our Saturday work with our Beacon work, or our Beacon Community School at Malcolm X Academy. And so that's an extended day now we have as an opportunity for those Malcolm X students. And because of the, I forget the initiative, but all SF elementary schools and yards being available on Saturdays.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think that was something that they did with the city.
Yeah.
Okay.
But, so Malcolm X's yard gets opened whether we're there or not. And we're using that as our hub for running the Saturday programming.
Got it.
But I think we need to ramp back up into it. We've gotten calls from parents, alumni who are in middle school now and, don't have an opportunity or don't have an option or don't feel like they have an option and want to come back. I think we're going to have to get that done.
Yeah. Then there's this thing about real estate, which I think is important for all organizations to think about, all people to think about, like how do you carve a space out into the city. And once you do that, what's the purpose of that space? When I ran Mission Bit, like the nonprofit that I was running for 4.5 years, we didn't have our own facility. And so, you lease out places, you run programs in other spaces. And for the most part, that's great. With Urban Ed Academy, once I got on the school board, you really started to come to me about, this research-based idea when John Hopkins put out this research about Black students have a higher chance to graduate from high school if they have a Black teacher before the third grade.
Sixth grade.
The sixth grade. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so to materialize that research, you wanted to provide housing.
Right.
And you've done that.
We've done that. And
you've done that in the city of San Francisco.
We've done that in the city of San Francisco.
The most expensive place to live in the country. If not, top one or two,
Yeah.
That's phenomenal.
Thank you.
And I know Dwayne Jones, who is the founder of UrbanNet, and he told me that I ain't heard from you. I was like, they got a building? I was not saying that you couldn't do it, but the fact that you did it when the fight for space is so heavy here, you know. So congratulations for one.
Thank you.
Talk about the facility, the story of getting it, where it's at right now.
Yeah, so we have we don't have a like full-fledged building where we can house everything. Uh-huh. Our strategy has been trying to get with homeowners or property owners of small sites, 2 units or less, 3 units maybe if we can get lucky, and basically beat the market to the punch. Uh-huh. How do we get to them to enable and activate the use of that asset effectively, that community asset for a teacher as opposed to anybody else. Right. If that anybody else can afford to be there, they could probably afford to be somewhere else. This teacher can't. So what specialized installation can we put around this to streamline it and make it real for the homeowner? Because ultimately, as a private owner, they can do what they want to do, right?
To some degree.
To some degree. Well, to some degree. Yeah. But and so within the bounds of the law.
Right. It's the lawyer.
Right. We have to effectively find ways to convince homeowners and property owners to give up the use of their space for a social good in their neighborhood. Right. Proximity matters is one thing we're trying to test out. And so we brought that as a pitch to, homeowners we were just meeting through the grapevine, sort of word of mouth. So I got to shout out, Martin Luther McCoy, whose family's been in the Bayview for a very long time, approached us maybe before we actually started working together on it, maybe like a year ahead of time, saying, hey, our family had a McCoy security. They had trained like hundreds of residents to get security jobs locally.
Right. A guard card.
Yeah.
I got a guard card, not through them, but continue.
Okay. Okay. So, yeah. And, had been this pillar, of community uplift. And I felt like it was sort of poetic to be able to make something like that happen, but we couldn't afford it. It was, I don't want to tell you how much he wanted for it, but he wanted what the market was telling him he could get for it.
Yeah.
And, we took some time, had a failed opportunity in trying to convert a liquor store into a learning center on 3rd Street. We had a project called Hacker Hub, where we had a bunch of very cool partners, Google, Warriors, Facebook, Giants, all pitching in to make this a possibility. How do we get addition by subtraction, take a liquor store out of a very concentrated neighborhood with them, and then add something of value add for the kids, and by way of a STEM learning center. Now, I didn't know it was a multi-pronged process to get this done. So the liquor store tenant was still there, and we had to get them out. That was hard.
Okay.
And once we got them out, though, we got to look behind the walls, and a 100-plus-year-old building needed a lot more work than we could afford. So we lost the project and had to get back some money to some other funders, but had a little bit of money left that was dedicated just to a capital improvement project in the Bayview on 3rd Street. It was like very specific. We had to figure out how to use it. So given that I couldn't really extract any value out of that because I didn't own any property, I didn't have any leads on any, it was the best I could do was say, hey, if I could get you this, what would you give us back for it? So if we can improve your commercial space out of this security system and turn it into maybe a mini STEM center, in the commercial part of it, will you give us a break on the rent on the residential piece upstairs? And I mean, there was a lot of other details that came through, but we got to a yes.
Okay.
So our first building is on 3rd Street. We are turning that into the Hacker Hub that we're supposed to do. We have our first cohort of teachers living upstairs.
Okay.
And they're all on track to becoming full-time classroom teachers next year.
Okay. Okay. So you partner with a private landowner and they made that entire building a space to service the community. It's a commercial storefront where you're doing the Hacker Hub on the first floor and then the residential upstairs. And all the people that are living in the residential space are working in schools in some capacity.
They're working in schools right now.
Okay. And what's been the process to recruit students or people to come in and teach and work here?
So we, on the front end of it, we had to build out some relationships with HBCUs directly. And we also were adamant with them that we were not going to their education colleges, where if there were Black men in those programs, which there aren't many, if there were, though, they're on track. Let them go teach, because that's exactly what they're doing, or that's exactly what we want them to do.
Right.
We have to influx external talent to it. And so we had some conversations with SF State, a couple of people at Berkeley about what we were doing. But something felt poetic about helping HBCUs also having their own problems and their own situations, helping them bring talent into the service industry, into the public service industry. And so we got lucky through a mentor, got connected with a couple, and they were like, hey, we can get you to the STEM college here, the agricultural college, and try it out.
Right. So
we had some funds, and able to fly out, and the pitch was, if we could get you some living here and we can run you through the process of developing at a high quality level into a teacher, will you come do it for our children? Right. The answer has been yes with every single candidate we've talked to.
That's incredible. That's incredible. Yeah, and you touched a little bit about the issues that HBCUs are facing, and I've had 2 guests thus far that have graduates of Howard, and I've also felt inclined to engage HBCUs through my work with Mission Bit, and I started to look at the graduation rates for a lot of the schools, like a lot of the historic schools like Grambling or Morehouse. The graduation rates are really low from the college, and they've historically had issues around like financial aid, and they're such they're so important, I think, to the legacy of the Black community in the country, and there are institutions that I want to see thrive. And so, this is all to say that I think you made the right move to try to partner with HBCUs, and I hope that you can continue to do that. And what I really love about the pieces that you're pulling together is that, it's all in service of solving this problem that's been very evasive for the district and really the country to solve. Like, how do we interrupt outcomes in the positive way for Black boys growing up in the country, right? So it's very innovative. It was like, in a sense, like it's also like it's like you're pulling all these pieces together, and it's you should just be celebrated for it. So it's going to be ups and downs along the way, but keep going.
Thank you.
Keep going. What are you looking to see happen in the coming year around that program? What's your vision for the space, and ultimately what you want to do in terms of recruiting educators to come to San Francisco?
Well, we're preparing to bring our 3rd cohort in.
Okay.
And so my vision is we have to capture site control over maybe 2 more sites to be able to make room for them. We have 4 sites total under control, 3 in San Francisco, 1 in West Oakland. But we have a couple of vacant rooms that we can use. And so we need to get probably 2 more sites. We'd love to bring 12 back this time around. We've been fortunate to be on a good run of getting support, and definitely need some more. So I don't want to act like we just are sweet out here. But
what type of support do you need?
Well, we have an ambitious goal to make sure every elementary school in the city has at least 1 man of color in it.
Okay. And we have 67 elementary schools in San Francisco.
Right. So we think just, we want to be safe.
Public schools.
Right. So we want to be safe and get more than that. So our goal is to get 100. To get that, we need to raise $10 million in 3 years.
Okay.
So our goal is to raise $2 million this year. And we recently have gotten some larger investments to try to go and get it so we can scale. But I'm not really interested in scaling super broadly on it. I think we need to go a lot more deeper. We can go deeper with the current men that we have. And I think 12 is still a jump. But I think with a cohort of 20, we can really make some noise about this as a progressive solution to a few different problems. Yeah. We pride ourselves on sitting at the intersection.
Right.
And some funders we've talked to and other folks have questioned that intersection because they are more comfortable in supporting a siloed opportunity. The education group wants to see it as education. Workforce groups want to see it as workforce. Housing groups want to see it as housing, but it's truly not that. So another soft goal is to get people more comfortable with talking about blended models across different industries. I think you have to have a multifaceted solution set to multifaceted problems.
We're dealing with a multifaceted issue.
And multi-generations.
Right.
So
right.
Come on.
Yeah.
I don't think we can poo-poo anything at this point.
Yeah. That's one of the reasons why I've been interested in exploring other policymaking opportunities within the cities, because as much as I love and as important as it is to direct policy at the school board, you really can't talk about outcomes for children unless you're talking about the family.
Right.
And the people and the personnel in front of the child.
Yeah.
And all of that is not just connected to a budget decision that happens at the school board. It's connected to transportation, to housing, to public safety, to amenities, right? Like how people get adjusted here, and a sense of the community that you get once you get here. Because it sounds like over the course of your academic time, you found community. Like you was big enough the undergrad where you went to school, that's community. You was big enough the fraternity. You was big enough the whatever else you were doing, right? But all that is important to help people feel adjusted. And when we ask African Americans to come to a city that doesn't have many African Americans, and the ones that you see on the streets are facing housing insecurity or suffering, the ones that you see in school, not at all times, but what the data will show is that they're not doing well. There's not a lot of affirming spaces where our people are being elevated, but you're creating that with what you're doing at UrbanNet.
We're trying, for sure. And I think to your point there, we've learned a lot of lessons over the last now 2 years doing this project. Learned a lot of lessons about where we want to focus our time and where we think we can get the deepest impact with our resources.
Right.
So we have this after school program, and we're proud of the fact that we can be in schools and be a community service provider. The development piece is a big X factor because to your point, you're not just talking about a professional. You're talking about a person. You're talking about a neighbor.
Right.
You're talking about a man. And are these young guys ready to step into that? We expect a lot out of our teachers, by and large. We put a lot of trust in them when we send our kids to school every day. And, we were 22 back then, 23. We thought we knew some stuff, but what would you tell yourself now?
Right. Yeah.
So that development is really nuanced when you talk about new stuff, because people don't want to, honestly, I found this too, people just don't want to support the development of adults. Like once you're supposedly good and on your own, you got a degree, you got a college, this, that, and the third, they're not interested in you getting professional development and you getting social development, you getting therapeutic development.
Right. Yeah. Not a lot of nonprofit organizations. I think you're going to more so find it through mentorship. And one of the things actually I wanted you to speak to before we sort of wrap was I I see you everywhere. Like you're all over the place. You know, you like not from around here. What Drake had that line like, I ran it out here. I ain't even from around here or something like that.
Something like that. So
and so, you know, networking sounds kind of corny, like the word. I think people have different associations with it, but you're very tapped in. And so talk about what your process has been for learning the landscape of who's involved in education, how you go about your week, like what your grinders look like, how you're planning that out, how you plan that out.
Well, I think it starts with my disposition, and I didn't notice as a younger man, but now coming into a professional sort of groove, you gotta be a better listener than you are a talker. And so that was first. You know, I'm not from here. I don't live here now, but when I was living here, wasn't really.
You live in Oakland, but you don't live in San Francisco. Yeah.
I used to live in San Francisco, and it was hard for a lot of the reasons we talked about. And so I put myself in a learner's mindset, and I had the luxury of having some really dedicated mentors early on. You mentioned Dwayne. You know, we talked about Shaman at times. We talk about Fred Blackwell. You talk about all these other guys that take time to talk to you as a young guy, you know, not necessarily as somebody looking to hustle and get to this thing. Just like, let's check in on you, who you are, right, what you need. And that vertical networking, I think I got lucky in that I didn't have to chase it as much because I was busy. I was running a nonprofit and I had work to do. So trying to be at the, you know, governor's function or the mayor's this, that, and the third, it was never a priority. And I think sometimes the universe conspires for you or with you when you're trying to do the right things. And I focused instead on doing horizontal networking and getting with peers because I was at an age and I'm in a city where some very talented, dope people. And they're going to be that in 5 years, in 10 years, in 15 years. And so they're just as important to know and they get to understand. And so I made sure I spent time doing some of that horizontal mapping as well. Who's doing some cool stuff that I'd like to just grab some coffee time with. I think also I'll go into it not expecting anything. Like, let's just learn from each other. Let's just understand what our energies are. If there's synergies, I'm sure we might be able to work it out. But if not, glad to know you're a brother in the city doing some cool stuff, or you a sister in the city doing some cool stuff. So people were surprised sometimes that I was from the East Coast, had this like pep to me, and I didn't want anything at the end of the meeting. Right. And they're like, all right, you actually cool. You know, so making sure you appreciated and respected people's time, opinion, expertise, authority as natives, folks from here, was one thing, the horizontal networking piece. And then the last piece, I found that you have to do a fair amount of investing in people for them to want to invest back in you. And so that means showing up to people's events when they doing a little parent chat and there's like 5 parents in the room and then you show up. They're like, what are you doing here? You know, but then you get a chance to talk to them a little bit afterwards and you took an hour out of your time and next time you want to do something with that person, they're all in because they see that you're real about it. And so I don't sleep a lot. That's probably the last piece of advice I'll say is make sure you sacrifice some of your sleep time.
I like to wake up early, but yeah, that's okay. Continue.
I think you get to be places when when you come in with a respectful demeanor, I think people sense it. And it's about investing the time.
Yeah. So we are always in the podcast talking about 2 topics.
Okay.
One is leadership and one is legacy. And so you are currently leading an organization. You've had a lot of leadership experiences up until this time with different clubs or what have you. Do you have any guiding principles around leadership?
A mentor once told me, the mark of a true leader is not how many followers you can create, it's how many leaders you can create. How many people beyond you that you had a touch on are going to go be better than you. Then you know you were about it. And so I try to be humble about what I'm doing because I know there's people out there doing incredible things, and I'm always honored to have the time to share what we're doing. So thank you again, man. I'm really, really honored to be able to share this Monday. But I would say any aspiring leaders out there need to start looking forward, and you're going to have to pay it forward by making sure the next group is ready and equipped. Right. This ain't about us anymore. Mm-hmm. We too old, bro.
yeah, in our early 30s. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I definitely like what your mentor told you, and I think that's true.
Yeah.
So with legacy.
Yeah.
So I named my company after my great grandfather's, the Luther Harris Holding Company, and he came out to San Francisco from this small town in Arkansas with a 6th grade education. When he passed, he had started a sawmill. He had bought several properties for his children. This is his dictionary.
Okay.
These are my great grandmother's, his wife's chairs.
Okay.
His legacy is important to me.
Yeah.
How do you think about legacy?
Ooh, it's interesting because I think, as I mentioned before, I have a very thin family history and experience to me. Uh-huh. It really starts with my mom and my grandmother, uh-huh. In New Jersey. And I've been fortunate to have a ton of extended family out there, and I've got to learn about their things. And so I wish I could speak to like a personal familial legacy like that. But I don't think I've been wrong in thinking about it this other way. And I'll encapsulate it in another quote I got from a mentor, which is in the San Francisco, in the California capital in Sacramento, mm-hmm. you can get any bill passed that you want, so long as you don't care whose name is on it. Huh. And so for me, my legacy is going to be about impact. Not going to be about my name. It's not going to be about my brand. It's about what we get done. So I would, like in a practical sense, I would love to be a part of the team that repeals Prop 209 here. Mm-hmm. I think we can't have true equity in this state, most progressive state in the country, by limiting ourselves on how we can spend our money.
Right.
But I'm not interested in being the one that is at the press conference when that happens.
Yeah.
And I try to approach every part of my life like that. So if the legacy can be that my children will have it easier and can do the things they want to do, I'm good with that.
Right on. Thank you, Randy.
Thank you, sir.
Seriguchi.
Yeah.
It's an honor to have you on.
Thank you, sir. This has been fun, man.
Yeah.
Can I come back? Can we talk about this San Francisco education stuff a little later?
Oh yeah, we got to dive in deep into that. Yeah, okay. Yeah. You'll definitely be a returning guest.
Okay.
All right. Peace. There we out. Peace, and thank you for listening to another episode of Cook on Monday Morning. I'd like to thank our guest, Randy Seriguchi, for laying out all of the incredible work that Urban Ed Academy is doing to engage, elevate, and inspire our Black and brown students in San Francisco and the educators he's bringing in to do that work. I'd like to thank all of you for supporting the podcast by sharing it, viewing it, telling your friends about it. Our last podcast with our previous guests continue to get new views, and I know it's because you're finding the content valuable. So continue to do that. You can learn more about Urban Ed Academy. We'll share the website on the screen, and I'll also share any social media links that Randy has on the screen, so you can reach out to him to learn more about the organization. I'd also like to thank all the people that make this podcast possible. I'd like to thank David Topete, my producer and videographer. Thank you, sir. I appreciate you. I'd like to thank the editor for the newsletter, Fernando Encico Marquez. Thank you, brother. I appreciate you. I'd also like to thank Icy House, who provides all of the mics and some of the audio recording equipment for the show. Thank you, Icy House, and thank you to the founder of Icy House, my lady. Her name is Saba. Saba. Thank you. I'd also just like to mention once again that at my company, the Luther Harris Holding Company, we are interested in doing podcast production. So if you are interested in starting your own podcast, you can reach out to me to talk about it at info@stevoncook.com. One of the main priorities of the Luther Harris Holding Company is to help companies grow, whether it's brand awareness, community engagement, strategic growth. We offer strategic advising consulting services. So if you're interested in talking more about that, you can reach out to me at info@stevoncook.com. We are in 2020. We are moving toward our goal of getting 2,020 subscribers by April 30th, at the end of the first quarter of this year. You can participate in us reaching that goal by also, continuing to share and subscribe. And finally, I want to thank the people of San Francisco to help our city run. Thank you all for the incredible work that you do. Thank you to our teachers, our custodians, our school lunch workers. Thank you to our first responders, our people that are in the fire department, our people that are EMTs. Thank you to the people that keep our streets clean, and our Muni drivers. And shout out to my dad. He's a driver for San Francisco MTA, a Muni driver. You keep our city moving. This podcast is for you. I'm your biggest fan. I appreciate you. Keep tuning in. Keep engaging. The last thing I'll say is that finally, Cook on Monday Morning, we always want to change how people feel about Monday morning, because we believe if we can change Monday morning, we can change our week. If we change our week, we can change our year. And if we change our year, we'll change our lives. That goes for the people of San Francisco. It also goes to people that are in cities like New Orleans, Houston, Dallas, Philadelphia, New Jersey, New York, Detroit, Miami. I want to hear more about what you're doing to change your Monday morning. I want to hear about the great organizations and leaders in your community. Continue to engage with me on Twitter at Stevon Cook. And I look forward to building a thriving community together. Peace, and we out.